J.I. Packer went to be with the Lord this past weekend, and at the age of 93 years of age. And I don't have any J.I. Packer stories. The only contact I had with Dr. Packer was he was probably the most prolific book endorsement writer of all time. I wonder if he doesn't hold the record for the number of what we call blurbs that he wrote for books. But he did it differently. In late 94, early 95 would be the time frame, I think. I had finished the King James Only Controversy. I've told the story before that back then Bethany House Publishers was just Bethany House. It wasn't owned by some big conglomerate at that time, like it's owned now by Baker. And the King James Only Controversy has a fair amount of Greek in it, textual critical symbols. And so what happened is, for the first edition, Bethany House purchased for me a laser printer, the Laser Master 1000. And I typeset the first edition. I literally typeset the first edition myself. Nobody else did it. I had to format it. I had to get it. I was using, did I use Ventura Publisher for that? I think I used Ventura Publisher for that. And so I had to print out the initial drafts for people to read, to send to people. And one of the people, I don't remember who had the connection. Somebody at Bethany House did. I don't know. But one of the people that the manuscript was sent to was J.I. Packer. And when I got a response from Dr. Packer, it included a couple of pages of typographical or formatting errors to be fixed, or just editorial changes as far as a grammar issue or a citation issue. Now, you don't, there's almost nobody who reads something that you're sent that closely. I've caught a couple things, but when people ask me to read books, I almost always have to say the only way I can get to it at all is if I can get an electronic version, and I'll listen to it. And even then, I may hear something while I'm out on the bike and go, that didn't sound quite right, but I'm listening to a file. It's not like I can go back and find that very easily. I've caught a few things and I've suggested a few things, but nothing like the way J.I. Packer went through. And I've talked to some other people who likewise published a work, and J.I. Packer read it and provided corrections. and you knew that he, when he wrote what he wrote, that he knew what the book was about. You know, there are a lot of blurb writers that read a few sentences on one page and another page, and just straight on through, and then write something up, and that's what you expect, but not J.I. Packer. No. And so that was the only interaction that I had with him was long ago. Because I'm not a big conference goer. I'm not a big conference. I don't. The big conferences other than G3 are just scared to death of me. So, and I think G3 might be scared to death of me too. But I've got a track record, so I'm good. So, anyway, the only other story is a story that I've told before, and it's actually an RC J.I. Packer story, and it comes to the same time period. It's Denver, 1995, summer of 1995. I think it was July, There used to be a big thing called the Christian Booksellers Convention, CBC, Christian Booksellers Convention. And some people called it the Jesus Junk Convention because this was before all the online stuff started. This was before Amazon. If you wanted books back then, you went. CBD was around. Christian Book Distributors was around. But Christian bookstores were still a thing. They're really not a thing anymore at all. Are there any in the Valley at all? I don't even know where they are. Yeah, I don't even know where they are. I've lost track of completely. You used to have Berean Christian bookstores, and there was one down on 7th Avenue, and South of Indian. Yeah. I can't remember what it was either now.
That's where we got all the good deals. Unless you went to
That's right. What was that? Jesus Chapel?
Jesus Chapel.
That was called Jesus Chapel. Yeah. Oh, man. See? It has been so long since any of those stores even existed. It was a different world. It was sort of fun going to those places, It's just totally different than just click and it shows up in the postman. Yeah. Anyway, what was I talking about? So you'd have these conventions, and that's when it wasn't just the books. It was all the trinkets and other stuff that those stores would sell. And so the King James Only controversy had come out, and of course was extremely controversial and was doing fairly well and made quite a splash. And a lot of the Christian bookstores were really interested in it because they had King James Only people coming in all the time, and they wanted to be able to go, just read that book type of situation. So Bethany wanted me there in case there were people coming up. They didn't want to have to answer any of the questions. So they flew me up to Denver. And guess who else was there? R.C. Sproul was there. John MacArthur was there. I remember the book on Sola Scriptura, this one here, had come out too, and there was a book signing with those. And so it just so happened that me and a group of a couple other younger guys caught RC in one of those big, how convention centers have these big, huge hallways, you're supposed to be moving lots of people in and out. And so we caught RC, and this was around the time of the evangelicals and Catholics together. That was 94. And you may recall that ECT, they had the big thing where they got everybody together, and MacArthur and Sproul and D. James Kennedy and all that kind of stuff. So that was on everybody's mind. And I was already involved in doing ministry to Roman Catholics and had started doing debates. We were about 5 years in at that point. So already had at least a few Roman Catholic debates under my belt at that point. Well, we ran to R.C. Sproul, and so we stopped him and we said, Dr. Sproul, we just got to ask you. We know you really like J.I. Packer, and we really like his stuff too. And of course, his probably the single most read presentation and one of the most powerful presentations of particular redemption, limited atonement, is Packer's introduction to Owen's book, The Death of Death and the Death of Christ. If you've not read it, I think it's actually been bound or at least printed separately by itself. But somebody put out an edition of Death that had that as the introduction, and it was just one of the best summary, passionate, well-written presentations on the subject anywhere. And so, a lot of us just have a lot of respect for J.I. Packer, and yet he was on the other side of evangelicals and Catholics together. He had signed that statement. And so there are a lot of people going, how can you on the one hand write about limited atonement with the clarity that he did, and of course the Puritans, and on the other side, sign on to something that MacArthur was opposed to, and Sproul was opposed to, and D. James Kennedy was opposed to, and things like that. And so we asked him, and in his best R.C. Sproul voice, he goes, well, you got to remember, Packer's an Anglican. He's got one foot in the Bible and one foot in Rome. We weren't exactly sure what to say. You know, when Sproul says something like that, you're like, his point was, if you go back, Packer had a long history of. That's what Anglicanism is, the via media. It has always been marked by trying to stay in the center. Even, I would argue, when the center is going to cause you to jump off of a cliff. There are times you've got to get out of the center of the road. Okay? If the center of the road makes you deny Christ, you've got to get out of the center of the road. That's all there's to it. So Anglicanism has that air. It has that history. It had that's what it's all about. And so what he was saying was, hey, that's his Anglican genetics. That's who he is. And that's why he is where he is. But you still love him. And yeah, that's the case. But those are my J.I. Packer stories. And I think it must have been Friday night, because it's right before we did the dialogue that, you know, my timeline blew up with all the J.I. Packer stories. And we knew that was coming, and you could tell that a lot of people had already written their eulogies and obituaries sometime over the past couple of years, because he was not in really good shape. He was fairly elderly. And so we rejoice in a servant who's gone to be with the Lord. And once again, if you're one of those people that just, you can't see past differences to rejoice in that way, I feel sorry for you, but there you go.